He's a founder, a teacher at Duke, and he runs 3 companies. But when it comes to legal, he needed it to be simple. And that's where Rocket Lawyer comes in. Let's dive in. Welcome to Small Business Spotlight. Bryce Gartner, good to have you here today. Bryce, tell us who you are.
I'm Bryce Gartner. I'm the CEO and founder of 3 companies right now in various industries. This is probably my 7th startup that I've been involved in, whether it's as an employee or the founder who's bootstrapped multiple companies, and some with successful exits. In addition to that, I spend time helping future leaders at Duke's Fuqua School of Business learn more about what it takes to succeed on the business front.
I love it. Well, I'm glad to talk to you, Bryce, and thanks for being here today. And I think one thing I want to do right at the top, I definitely do want to talk about Rocket Lawyer and get your input on Rocket Lawyer, how you're using it, et cetera. But I think let's just launch into a few tips that you may have for business owners. You're a seasoned entrepreneur. And so I'd love to get your tips of success, what you've learned along the way. Why don't we do that? We'll do that for one part of the interview. Then the other part of the interview, we'll jump into Rocket Lawyer, how you're using it, the products you're using, and what you like about it, if that sounds okay with you. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, good. By the way, which company are you using Rocket Lawyer for? All of them or one in particular?
Actually, 2 out of the 3.
Okay.
And I only got back into using Rocket Lawyer. I've used Rocket Lawyer for years, but I really upgraded to the premium membership to take full advantage of not just what we were doing with organization, but also what we were doing with contracts and some other things that I'd primarily used Rocket Lawyer before, but I'd given another platform for establishing the business a chance and was incredibly disappointed. I had heard some good things about one of Rocket Lawyer's competitors. So for one of the companies this time around, I gave that one a chance and was incredibly disappointed in the service, what I got for the money, and how it all played out.
When you think about the disappointment you had of the service, what you got for the money, how it played out, what was the difference with the Rocket Lawyer experience? Talk about Rocket Lawyer, like, if it sounds like to me there was an aha moment, that's my words, not yours, but what was it like having the Rocket Lawyer experience for you? What was that like?
Well, I think it was a lot easier. It was a lot more seamless. And I felt like with Rocket Lawyer, I had the things that I needed right in front of me, and it made it easy to make decisions, whether it was some of the organizational paperwork, whether it's the state paperwork or registered agent paperwork, or whether it was, actually some of the like articles of organization and those kind of things that we needed for partners in a business, really. We organized an LLC, so we had a lot of members who were wanting to get involved with one of the businesses, and Rocket Lawyer made that a lot easier. What I felt like the other one was all about was, what can I upsell you on? What can I sell you next? And even in areas where I had no need for some of the services they were trying to sell, they just kept trying to sell those services. And with no additional customer service, if you had questions, really, it was like cookie cutter, and it didn't even really fit what we were trying to do.
I love that. I listen, I've been there myself, where you feel you go to a restaurant or using a service and they're just stuffing more and more at you. You're like, you know what? I just want to use the service and continue to do what I'm doing. So I love it for sure. And remind me, did you say did you grow into Rocket Lawyer or just use it? Because some people come into it using one product and then they realize, oh, it can do all of this. Talk about your experience with that if you can.
Yeah, so in one of my previous businesses, we used Rocket Lawyer to help us with just some of the general paperwork. We had some complicated things where when we were selling into clients, we needed to have some stronger agreements. And the Rocket Lawyer helped us with that, gave us some templates, but then we used the Rocket Lawyer attorney service to help us refine a couple of those things. And then in addition to that, when we exited that company very successfully before the pandemic, what we did was I actually didn't have a business where I needed it, but I wanted to keep all my stuff. So I lowered my membership at the time. And then when it was time to ramp up these new businesses, I just looked back at Rocket Lawyer, especially after the bad experience with one of their competitors, and turned that service back up to get what we needed.
I love that. If you had to add any metrics or numbers, and I know it may be a little hard, but can you think about, hey, using Rocket Lawyer, it's helped you X%, or it's increased your feeling of security a certain percentage or thought? Can you give any numbers to it? It may not be, but any numbers that come to mind, like Ramon, man, if I could guess, I would say that Rocket Lawyer has helped me like this, or you're doing things one way, it helped in another way. Anything like that comes to mind for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I have a really good set of attorneys that I work with on a regular basis on my side that have just been my personal attorneys forever. And because one of our businesses is in the legal space, I have good relationships with attorneys. But, a lot of things are very similar to what we do with Infuse. It's not they don't have time. It's that, getting them to carve out the time for a little project that's an agreement or a policy or an internal policy, that's not top of their priority list, no matter how big of a client you are. And so as I was thinking about this thing, those are the things that Rocket Lawyer really delivers. And if I think about that from just a straight up dollars and cents standpoint, it pays for itself. Rocket Lawyer pays for itself in less than one document because of billable rates for attorneys and things. And then I'm always reviewing it and talking about different things that need to go in there. And I really do feel like that's, as soon as you do it one time, it pays for the annual fee. So
yeah, I love that.
It's so solid in that manner.
No, thank you. What would you tell to other business owners who are looking at you? You've done quite a bit of things. You're an experienced entrepreneur, Bryce, that are thinking of one of two things. A, we don't need legal protection. And I bet that many businesses are not thinking of that. Let me rephrase the question. That are thinking, online service, Rocket Lawyer, does it really work? Is it for me? You've used it. So what would you tell them? What would you tell your peers?
I'd say absolutely use it. It may not get you 100% of the way where you want to get to, but it gets you 95% of the way there. And then you can do some refinement. And if you're concerned about any of the refinement that you need to do after you walk through one of the wizards, that ability to reach out to an attorney online, just have them do that quick review and make sure you didn't do anything that undoes the whole purpose of Rocket Lawyer and their wizards and their templates. That to me is really where the opportunity, where it pays for itself.
I love that. Also, Bryce, I'm curious, can you think of any specific examples where a legal protection was important to you and what it was? And it may not be, you don't have to mention names and scenarios. And I was talking to Marvin and he sued me and I sued him and we don't need to go there. But can you think of an example where you're thinking legal protection or Rocket Lawyer, like, did you do an agreement, buy a business, do something with your family with the will, anything like, hey, let me tell you a story that maybe Rocket Lawyer aided in, something memorable? I don't know. Anything comes to mind?
The good news for me is with all these businesses, I've been really lucky relative to litigation. Haven't really had a lot of issues.
Good.
But the fact that I know how important it is, and because I'm around the legal industry a lot, I know how much risk there is. And so it is just a comfort thing. It's like it is the cheapest insurance policy that I can think of versus me writing it, versus me trying to write it on my own. And I think that's the part that is the most important, is I feel very confident. And whenever I don't feel confident, you've got that ability for some of these things that are pretty straightforward. It's just to ask that quick question, get it answered, and move on, and not take up the time. I think the one thing that gets overlooked so much with entrepreneurs is you don't have time, right? The one thing you can't buy is time. And as an entrepreneur, you're not, especially in companies where you're either bootstrapped or you have a small investment pool or whatever it is, you really have to be focused on all the things you do in a day. Because I always think it's a joke when people think about how entrepreneurs are viewed, and they all think of the really successful ones after they've been successful. And that's what entrepreneurism is. And it's really not. That part of being part of a startup, of a small business, is nose to the grindstone, heads down. In the morning, you're the chief revenue officer. In the middle of the day, you're the chief operating officer. And at the end of the day, you're the janitor. And you have to be able to move through those roles seamlessly. And if something as simple as getting a contract out the door that you're comfortable is protecting your interest takes 6 hours instead of an hour, that's a huge problem. Because it takes away from part of those other roles that you're playing.
Want to shift, and you mentioned it some already, but any tips or suggestions you have for business owners? You've started several businesses, have a lot of experience. When you look back at your experience, again, we can go to marketing, sales, hiring, firing, culture, so many things, but any 2 or 3 high-level things or anything that comes to mind, you're saying, Ramon, out of your years of experience, if I was talking to a business owner, here's what Bryce's secret sauce is to success that it takes to really be a success in business. Anything comes to mind?
Yeah, you've got to surround yourself with people that are as passionate about as you are about the mission. When you're starting a company, it's a lot of times, if you have the good idea, if you have a good product or service that you're taking to market, the difference between being successful and not is the passion of the people you surround yourself with. Whether in the case of its investors or it's people that, or it's your early employees, you want people who are just as passionate about how your product or service is changing the world as you are. Because otherwise, there are days you need that energy not to come from you, but it needs to come from someone else. And if it doesn't, if it's not there from everybody that's involved, then you lose sight of it. And you don't want to lose sight of it. I think that's one. And I think that passion is critical. And you want to surround yourself with people in that same thing that don't have the same experience as you do, that don't look like you, that will argue with you. One of the best things I've ever talked about with different people that I've worked with in the various startups I've been a part of is really having people that I trust and respect, but that will tell me I'm flat out wrong. Because if they aren't willing to challenge you, then you're not going to challenge yourself enough to get really where you want to go. And I think the third thing I would say is do not ever overlook the importance of the finance side of the business. It is so easy for people to get out over their skis or not take the amount of time that you need to just once a month to look at where we are, where are we going financially, and understand what needs to be done and what the opportunity is, and understanding that at the entrepreneurial level, at that startup level, that you're not going to get paid. You're not going to make money. You're not going to be that successful entrepreneur you see until you've had the sacrifice months and years to get there. The people we hear about in the news, the people we see on TV that are successful, they put in the time where they weren't making money, where they were wondering whether next month they were gonna, whether they were going to be able to pay all the expenses that they were wanting to incur. And you have to understand that mentality to actually be successful. Because if you aren't, the company that we successfully exited, I was just talking to one of the people who was early into that business with me. I was talking to him earlier this morning, and we were talking about the fact that our early team members didn't understand that they were getting paid and we weren't. Right? We were there all the time. They were getting paid because they were great performers and we needed them to make the business successful. But if you're making a decision between, do I keep my team members on board or do I pay myself? If you want the business to grow, you got to make the right decision in that scenario. And so those are the things. And, ultimately, that only happened for a year or whatever because we kept reinvesting in the business, not, oh, hey, I'm going to go buy a boat. I'm going to go buy a whatever. We kept reinvesting in the business, and that got us to where we were able to have a very successful exit.
That's powerful. And I'm curious, Bryce, so one other thing I wanted to ask you, and anything I didn't, feel free to mention it, but what do you do in those times you're feeling down? What do you do in those times you're feeling low? And you may have mentioned this, surround yourself with people, but what has Bryce done when things didn't go well, things may have seen failure, even when there's family issues? What did you do? It's on Monday. What did you do on Tuesday? Get back up, put on your pants, go to work, smile at the customers. If you get what I'm asking, what did you do?
So for me, it was always looking for what am I going to do today that is going to have a very positive impact on a customer, right? One of our clients. And I spoke about this at a big conference where we were involved with a whole lot of other companies that were like us. But we were at a conference and I was talking about the fact that we don't do what we do for us. We do it to deliver for the customer. And one of the things I'm most proud of from that business we exited, and we have those same type of goals today in this is we used NPS score over and over and over again. And we used it from day one. From day one, we did a quarterly NPS with every client we had, even when we only had 35 clients, right? And when we had 350 clients, we were still doing it every quarter. We had a 5-year average NPS score of 82. I mean, so we were off the charts. But here's what I mean by that, where I talked about the team and you look for team members that are going to pick you up. So we had done our NPS scoring every quarter. And one quarter, we hit 90. Our NPS score across the board ultimately was 90. And I was like, I'm ecstatic. I'm telling the whole team, all of our leadership, everything. This is fantastic. I said, I don't know how we get better than this. And to a person, our leadership team pulled back into a leadership meeting and said, how are we going to make it 92 next quarter? Not me. I was like, we keep this thing above 75 or 80. I'm good. But the team that I had around me was like, no, we're not satisfied with 90. If we can get to 90, how do we get to 92? And when you surround yourself with people like that, it's not hard to get up every day even when you had a really bad day. It's not hard to get up every day and go, yeah, I can do this. I got this.
Bryce, this is a gem. But anything I didn't ask you about entrepreneurship that you wanted to share, and or anything else about Rocket Lawyer that you wanted to tell them and share about Rocket Lawyer, how it's helped your business? Either one we'd love to hear.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's just helped us accelerate getting the things that you just have to deal with done and done quickly. And it doesn't put it on your to-do list, really. It goes on, but it comes off quickly versus something that really, really stretches out, right? And it's funny because Rocket Lawyer, I was only going to have 2 businesses. And then I sat down with my accountant and he's like, no, you need a 3rd business. And you need it because you need it for these other reasons. And it's like, okay, right back to Rocket Lawyer, put in the stuff, 3rd business. And so, that made it really simple. And I think at the end of the day, as entrepreneurs, we're always looking for something simple. We need the things that can get complicated to just be simple because we got to be focused on the other things. Like we're focused on this whole situation where we're trying to get a product out the door. We're trying to do product testing. We're trying to deal with beta testers. That's important. Taking time to figure out some of these other things when we know there are experts out there to do it, but that's not where we need to focus our time. Let's be focused on what matters.
That simple tool is Rocket Lawyer, I assume? Is that what you're...
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm all about the simple tools. We have a whole plethora of simple tools, but on the legal side, definitely Rocket Lawyer. So
I love it. Bryce, thank you so much. And to look for me to call upon you again. I'd love you to be my in-house go-to person for great tips for entrepreneurs. But Bryce, thank you so much. Be blessed and have an amazing day. Appreciate you.
Yep, you too.
Okay,
Thanks.
bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.